Let me tell you the story, why it is any of my business for you to put and feel your feet on the ground. Because I literally fell from the sky, and I'm very appreciative and grateful to be standing here on my own 2 feet today. And because it is empowering and beautifully human for you to feel your feet in the ground, and it brings you immediately into the here and now. My story begins in March 1993, at the age of, when I was moving to New York City at the age of 19. I just finished my diploma in hotel and tourism management, started as a supervisor in housekeeping, chasing after chambermaids, making sure that hotel rooms were cleaned and properly staged for the next check-in. I moved up that managerial ladder and found myself amongst a pretty cool gang of hotel industry movers and shakers as the hotel company I worked for truly redesigned, reinterpreted, and reinvented the hotel guest experience. And with that, I was part of that new hotel, boutique hotel and design movement from its infancy. There's no star, designer, model of the 90s I did not meet. You name them, and I met them. Rode the mahogany elevator and walked that blue ghost-imprinted lobby carpet with Madonna, Zaha Hadid, Johnny Depp, just to name a few. And there are rumors that I might have actually been the one who hired Bradley Cooper as a bellboy. But what do I know? I was so busy managing New York City's hippest hotels and being Euro cool. And he was not the Bradley Cooper of A Star is Born yet, so I was too snobbish to even notice. I was a busy New York City career girl. I had a lot of going out and partying to do. I always say back then, I owned that city, or I was hers and she was mine. I lived that heartbeat and had my fingertips on that pulse of the city that never sleeps, and rarely ever slept myself. I loved the fast-paced, numbers-oriented, goal-focused, competitive nature of that world. Fast forward, by the age I was 30, I was breaking the 6-figure income mark and had transitioned from hotel management into the corporate events world. And how did I all do that? With a 3-step process I didn't even know I was following yet. Visualize, feel, act. Step 1, visualize, is in simple terms the moment when you start thinking about something. Putting a feeling to it, step 2, is as you start visualizing something, you actually automatically put a feeling and emotion with that. In my case, it was visualizing myself living in New York City as choice of my career path, and with that, I felt the emotion of success and belonging there. Step 3, putting it into action. This is where you get mind and body working together. You embody your vision. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it mind is brain in action and says, when you start planning your action, your brain naturally starts to fire. In my case, or in my experience, it started walking me into that direction. So here I was. I had built myself a pretty good New York City living, and I had dedicated my life to my career in sales and marketing. And when I wasn't flying from sales call to site inspection to conference in airplanes, I was jumping out of them. As I guess and even more adrenal activation and fight or flight practice. My feet were literally coming off the ground a little bit. Flying might be in my genes. Almost my entire family is trying to grow wings of some sort. I love the excitement of pretending to fly like a flock of birds. The excitement, the thrill, the seeing the world from a different perspective, the dance in the sky, the opening of the parachute, the slowing of things down, the flying yourself back to home base, and embracing that safe landing, putting my feet back on the ground. Highly enjoyable moments. So on Saturday, October 11th, on my 601st skydive, I literally broke myself in half. We had to land out, away from the drop zone. My canopy was slightly malfunctioning, and I crashed that landing. I slid in on my left ankle. Ouch. Open fracture. Foot off to the side. Talus bone sticking out at the bottom of it with dirt and grass on it too. I pounded my coccyx on Mother Earth, jackknifed forward, lifted my torso up and back, and was very aware that I just had injured myself pretty badly. Oh, did I wish I could turn back time. 10 seconds would have corrected the mistake. People always think I faced death in that accident, but that, I actually knew that it wasn't about life or death. What I was really scared of was never walking again. So that 601st landing made me promise to the gods that I would keep my feet on the ground. I woke up after my first surgery in the hospital to the news that my ankle might need multiple foot-ankle surgeries and most likely will need to get fused, made immobile. As in 85% of the cases, that talus bone doesn't know how to get its own blood supply after an injury like that. Dries out, eventually dies, hence the fusion and then making it immobile. That talus bone down there was millions of miles and worlds away from me. I had no connection or relationship with it. And to make a long story short, I also did not know what to expect yet in terms of my spine, which later on got fused in a 9-hour extensive surgery from L2 to T11. I was scared. I was all caught up in my brain. I was all thoughts, angst, fear, and disconnection. So in that very moment, that same day, beautiful Inge from Belgium shows up on my bedside in intensive care, offering to help. We were more like acquaintance, not close friends yet. She spent the summer jumping out of airplanes at the same drop zone in New York State as I was. An amazing character, loving, caring, pretty wild and free. Because you know, when you fall out of the sky, you need to get your feet back on the ground. And Inge was amongst the ones who helped me do so. By pointing out that I had 15% to work with. Remember, 85 were against my bone ever healing. And that talus bone down there needed blood. And that I could actively partake in trying to get some blood there. And that I was and always am in a place of being able to take responsibility for the outcome of my life and situation. She also suggested that the healing needed to not just be in the hands of amazing doctors and statistics, but that it had to become a responsibility of my own. So I learned to build connections in my body, that I can have a relationship with that body and navigate in it all the way to the soles of my feet. I also took on great humility and awe for that situation and life I was living and in, and realized that the very moment is the one that can affect my future. And I decided to take on that adventure within together with Inge as my guide. And she guided me through a process that only later on I realized I was already working with before. Visualize, feel, act. Visualize, healthy bone, hiking, biking, snowboarding, dancing, running, and with that activating muscle memory. Putting a feeling with it, happy, healthy, mobile. And putting it into action. Visualize, inhale, visualize oxygen-rich, nutritious, dark red blood. Bring it down all the way to the sole of my foot. Squish it around that bone. Visualize that bone sucking up all the needed blood and nutrition. Exhale all the dirt, bacteria out. Let go. Repeat. Inhale. Visualize dark, red, nutritional, oxygen-rich blood. We did that process over and over and over again. Inge also put her hands on me in order to share the essence of human touch, feeling safe and trust. Putting mind and body to work together. Embodying your vision. She didn't necessarily have a name for that process. It just kind of came naturally to her. Today, I understand that such processes have roots in many teachings of well-being as well as in the yoga tradition, where you integrate mind and body in the present moment to initiate transformation and change. The talus bone took on blood. It healed. It never needed another surgery and is pretty mobile today. I also underwent that 9-hour extensive spinal surgery, spent about 2 months in hospitals and rehabilitation, and recovered in a way that still makes doctors today quite spellbound. I knew I experienced something that needed to be shared. I also knew that I couldn't have done it without modern medicine on my side. I had to go back into my business career because I didn't know any better, and I also built a lifestyle that needed a certain income to be supported. Everyone who remembers me from back then, or got to watch me back then, remembers me in my cow print cast, crutches, pins sticking out at the bottom of my leg, hobbling up and down the 80 or so stairs to my Williamsburg, Brooklyn loft, up and down stairs to subways in and around New York City. My defined upper arms still tell the story today. And to this day, I'm left with nerve damage and incomplete paralyzation that make my life a little bit more interesting to care for, and reminds me on a daily basis how close I've come upon that issue of never walking again. I wanted to share. Also, the journey is still ongoing. And even back then, I still had a long way ahead of me in building the pieces and pathways back together in my body, mechanically, emotionally, and neurologically. I wanted to share that experience of recovery, but I also understood I didn't have the tools, the knowledge, the explanation for it yet. So I began to study, to integrate, to practice, to observe. And I found that the yoga that I had been doing until then, only because the Sex and the City girls were doing yoga too, held a lot of my answers. My going to yoga slowly transformed into practicing yoga. And I started to not just show up for the fancy warrior and handstand poses, but also all of a sudden for the philosophy, for the mind-body integration, for the breathing, for the whole approach. Meditation became a daily habit to start bringing my mind a little bit more into presence. I also took on trainings in all kinds of body work modalities, went to India to study with great masters, and spent weeks and months sitting and listening to teachers and innovative thinkers of mind-body integration work. But most importantly, I implemented a practice into my daily life that seemed to strengthen me from the inside out and that made me take on responsibility in getting well and learning how to manage my newly acquired handicaps. So, in order to enter that new phase of my life, I left the US and moved to my mother country, Austria. I found myself refusing attractive jobs in hotel management and the international corporate events industry just because I knew I already had taken too many detours. To say the least, it wasn't quite easy to transform under the careful, observing eyes of friends, family, and business colleagues. But throughout all of it, I made sure to practice to feel my feet on the ground, and with that, come into my own presence. Today, I'm a yoga teacher, a meditation instructor. You can call me a self-empowerment guide. I dabble in arts and producing and hosting my own little yogic community radio show called VENUSfrequency, like the second planet from the sun, called Shukra in Sanskrit, Vedantic, or yoga terms, meaning bright, lucid, and clear. And I have made it my business for you to put and feel your feet on the ground. And I've taken away a few more learnings from that transition. I've learned that I can leave the victim behind and that I can take on that great, vulnerable, and joyful responsibility of taking responsibility for the outcome of my life. I've also learned that coming into your own presence is the key to transformation, and that you have to allow that transformation to take some time. It's a journey. But if you keep on feeling and acting upon it, you eventually will find yourself living your own way into that vision. And last but not least, I've learned that you can fall, even out of the sky, You just have to put and feel your feet back on the ground. Visualize, feel, act. Here I am, feeling my feet on the ground. Are you doing the same? Thank you.